Here we are. Now we're recording. Okay, hello. It's been quite a regular event for us here at Tech, doing a live webinar every week. And every week we've touched on a different but pressing topic for our parents and students from Turkey. And I'm happy to today present to you a very valuable partner school, Earlscliff in Folkestone, Kent. And we'll be talking about everything about boarding schools. So here with me today is Joss Williams, who is the head teacher of the Earlscliff School.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Joss. Thank you for joining us, and it's a great pleasure to do this with you. And Jenny, also from School Staff. Hello, Jenny. Nice to have you with us. Hi. So I'm going to quickly start sharing my screen. The topic here today is, of course, yes, boarding life, boarding schools in the UK. This is because most of our students that come to the UK from Turkey are very new to the concept of boarding. Boarding schools in Turkey almost don't exist. We do not know what life is like. A lot of parents always ask us, so what's life like? What's a typical day like? And what's different about a boarding school to your normal day high school? So we wanted to highlight those differences, and we want to also underline the advantages of the boarding schools. The UK is very well known for its success and hundreds of years of tradition in this field. And I must also say that as a counsellor, 24 years in the business, have been very happy with the highly selective schools that we've been partnering with, committed to quality, committed to success, committed and dedicated to the future of the students that their parents feel that they can just hand over to us, so to speak. You know, I'm very happy that we're holding this session, and there's a lot that we must go through, and there'll be loads of questions for you as well. And I just also want to underline the fact that this session is recorded. How are you today, Joss?
Very well, very well. I think it's very interesting that you touch on the history of British boarding schools, because they did start, you know, a long time ago, sometimes hundreds of years. And the image that you sometimes have of a British boarding school is of a cold, drafty building, long rooms full of a dozen beds, metal bed frames and single glazed windows, somewhere on a drafty moor. And things have changed. Things have certainly changed in boarding, such that, you know, for example, at Earlscliff, we have single or double occupancy rooms, which are very much like university student accommodation, and they're en suite. They're very comfortable, look a little bit like a hotel room, I suppose you might say. So I'm sure we'll touch on that and other topics. But yeah, that sort of the history and the change of British boarding schools is very interesting. And I hope your parents are reassured that that sort of 19th century Charles Dickens view of things is very much out of date.
There are two views on boarding schools in the UK, in fact. One that's pictured by Harry Potter.
Yes.
the whole series. So we all want to come and see those schools as parents and future students in boarding schools. But they're not the kind of schools that we particularly would prefer. So everybody has a different choice. But we would want to talk about that tradition, and we would also want to talk about the modern face and phases of boarding schools with you. So and again, thank you for sharing your time and opinion with us.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. So, I think the Harry Potter thing, if I may just touch on that, there's two aspects of the Harry Potter movie version of British boarding schools, which do exist still in some boarding schools. First of all, you've got that red brick Gothic architecture, you know, very old, possibly quite cold buildings, and also, although spectacular, a very isolated location for boarding schools. And again, going back to the history, parents in the 19th century in England did tend to want to send their children far away out into the moors and see them, you know, I'll see you at Christmas, that kind of thing. But gladly things have changed. You've got a very fantastic shot there of Earlscliff. And one of our buildings, there are a number of buildings spread amongst that part of West Folkestone, and you can see the sea in the distance. So there's got that red brick sort of imposing look to the buildings, which I think gives the students a sense of grandeur and that they're engaged in a sort of a great project, and there's something they're doing is quite important. But equally warm, comfortable, modern facilities, nice rooms, en suite, as I say, in a lovely part of a lovely town by the seaside. So it needn't be that sort of Harry Potter Gothic red brick windswept isolation.
Yeah. Josh, do you think that the school setting impacts the education that it provides? How does it? So that when the parent chooses a boarding school, this is one of the criteria, obviously. Sometimes they want to be they say, okay, on the seaside or with great football grounds or in the city, or they want to be, as you said, far away in a moor and a field that's safer. What's the difference and how does it impact the education?
That's such a good question. I think really, look, all of these things come back to know your child, and that is the family, know the child, the agent, who is absolutely vital in this, saying, tell me about your child and I'll suggest some schools, rather than just I'll suggest some schools, and the school being the right fit for the child. So, for example, if your child is very, very sporty and wants to play football and rugby, there are schools that have got pitches as far as the eye can see. But those schools, by definition, are not centrally located in big cities because they've got great big pitches and they're out in the countryside. So the child's interest will in some way impact on the geography of the school that you choose. So Earlscliff, for example, is 1 hour from London, so very handy. Parents flying in, flying out, all of that kind of thing. Parents can visit, very simple. But it's a nice, quiet seaside town, so you've got the security from the parents' point of view of they're worried about their child who's a long way from home, as is absolutely perfectly natural. And you get a town which is big enough to have a cinema and plenty of cafes and 2 sports centres and a skateboard park and the sea and the beach and all of that kind of thing. It's a big enough town for that, but it's a small enough town for it to be really safe, really secure, and close to London. So yeah, great question. The geography where you want to be is going to impact on things, but if you know your child and know what their interests are as they're developing, then that will help you ask the right questions and choose the right school.
So what should be the parents' criteria when choosing the right school, Josh?
So I would say, going back to my own, my 2 youngest children, for example, my little daughter, who is not so little anymore, she's 20 and studying law. She was very sporty when she was younger, quite academic. She loved her hockey, and so I chose for her a school where she could play hockey with all the other girls. She's very gregarious, so she was okay in a big school, 1,200 students. She wasn't going to get lost in that environment. As time went on, she lost interest in sport and took more to her studies and really focused on that. But all of those factors had an impact on my choice for her. And I've just touched on one thing there. You'll know your child and their level of confidence and how comfortable they are in their own skin. You don't want them to get lost in a very big school if they are a little bit on the quiet side, still finding their way in life. Rosie has been sort of boisterous and outgoing since she was a tiny wee thing. So throwing her into that school, I knew she'd have the place running around after her and, people doing what she said from early on. So that is a big thing to consider as well. As you can see from the slide there, Earlscliff is a school for older students. So they're 15 to 19 years old. It gives it more of that pre-university feel, that grown-up sense. Our students wear suits rather than a uniform, so business attire for the boys and girls. This slide talks about what a lot of boarding schools, I think, in the UK offer, that independence, that step away from home towards becoming a young adult, but in a really safe, encouraging environment where you are known. So Earlscliff, as you know, is a very small school. And I had our meeting, our weekly meeting today with the heads of year, the nurse, the special educational needs coordinator, the assistant head pastoral, the assistant head academic, talking case by case, one by one, through every student in the school that we had even the slightest concern or wondering about that student. So in a small school, you can have all of the key people in the school knowing your child really well and being able to support them through the sort of trials and tribulations of growing up. It's about helping people grow up.
I feel that where the student does not know what sort of a career path to take and what sort of subjects to take, smaller schools are always more attentive to those students, helps them shape up their future decisions. And, you know, from my experience with my students in boarding schools, where there are hundreds and hundreds of students, and there are schools of those types, I find that, yes, they'll find a lot to do. They'll find loads of clubs to join, loads of sports activities to do. But in the end, it all comes down to what the student wants to do. So they may only be interested in one thing, and the rest of everything is just luxury. Is just extra facility.
Absolutely.
So,
we get experts in. Sorry.
No, sorry, please.
We get experts in from time to time on various aspects of helping children grow up. So experts on psychological development, experts on learning. One chap who's a quite well-renowned academic called Fintan O'Regan. He's an Irish academic on child development, and he came up with the slide in one of our training days in January 2022. He came up with this line, "No duckling left behind." And
that's very good.
Our students are older, and so, you know, you don't always think of them as ducklings, but they are somebody's duckling, and we mustn't forget that. And that phrase has kind of, you know, repeated itself and comes up in conversations all along. And you're absolutely right. Larger schools, wider range of opportunities, plenty of teams to get involved with, more sports and that kind of thing. Smaller schools, the ducklings don't get left behind. And you mentioned university advice. You know, the deadline for university applications for certain subjects and certain universities is tomorrow. And I'm spending time tomorrow morning finishing off one of the applications for medical school with a Romanian scholar of ours, and that is, you know, the head teacher one-to-one with a student for 2 hours. That doesn't happen in bigger schools.
No, absolutely not. 15 to 19 is the ideal age range that the Turkish students are traveling abroad for boarding schools and for the first time being away from home. So that's where it is even more important for us, for my parents, that to know that they'll be well looked after in every sense. Now, obviously, as well as all that, the academic strength is a criteria. They don't just want anywhere. They want somewhere where the child can achieve, can aspire, can be motivated, and can reach out to their goals. So results are all there. Every school is very transparent in what they achieve, and the parents will always look into that. So the question here is, Joss, for you, is how do we make sure, let's say we have a very lazy and the parents have had enough, they can't wait to get rid of this kid from home, and then boarding school is an option on the table. The question is, even I, as the mother, can't get him to study. So how do they do it?
Yeah, no, well, that's a very good question, and there's a number of sort of features that impinge on that. I think when you're looking at a school, there are some really clever questions that a parent or an agent can ask. And absolutely, what are your results? And how do you get those results from your students? Because one way of getting amazing results is just by selecting really highly motivated, really hardworking students, and you keep out everybody else. And remarkably, you get great results. That's one way of doing it. And I've never worked or wanted to work in a school that was going to be highly selective in that way, because I think as a professional, you want to do right by the child that comes your way, by the family that comes your way, and help them flourish. So one of the questions you can ask is tell me how you get these results, and tell me about your value added. And value added means if a child comes into the school and just spends 2 years there, in any school, they'll progress to this point. They just will, because they're growing up and they're learning. A really good school will add value, so your child will do better at that school. And so past results tell you about past students, but your child is not a past student. Your duckling is today's student.
Yeah, yes.
So exactly. So what will the value added be for my child? How will they come on at your school? And all schools should know this. All schools will know. And if they're only selecting the brightest and the best and the most hardworking student, their value added is basically zero. The school's not doing much. Yes. The child's doing it. And then you ask, well, how are you getting these results if you're not highly selective? And they might say things like you can see on this slide. So track, we test every student in every subject every week. And that sounds really onerous. It sounds like it's going to be a burden for the child, but really it's a feedback loop for the teacher.
Yes.
Teacher teaches the subject for a week. End of the week, on every Thursday, students sit a test on what they've learned since last Friday. That result gets back to them on the Friday. If every student is in the class has understood everything and got a pretty good mark, then on Monday, the teacher can carry on teaching. If all of them have not understood, then the teacher has to rethink and reteach and go back over that material, because the way that they taught it didn't work, didn't get across.
Yes. Yes.
If half the students did well, fantastic, pat on the back, chocolate bar. And half of them did not so well, then the teacher will focus on those few students and say, okay, now the resources work for some people, they didn't work for you. What can I do to help? And we coach those students, small group or one-on-one, and say, I've got to get you ready for Monday. How do I get you ready for Monday? What was wrong? Now, in the best situations, it is perhaps that the student lacks some background knowledge and we can fill in the gaps. In the worst situation, it's the student is not motivated. So we have a conversation about motivation, about aspiration, about what it is you want to achieve. We have very small class sizes, so averages of 7. So again, your ducklings don't get left behind. And that's another way that we do it. And then intensive teaching, our academic day is longer than many schools. So many schools finish at 3:15, we finish at 4:30. And so the amount of contact time with a really good teacher in a really small class is enormous. And that has a measurable impact as well. So the parents should ask the school, what are your results? What's your value added? And how do you get those results? If the student lacks motivation, I think then it's a question of what are they interested in and what are they good at, and focus on those areas. By the time you're 15 to 19, in the British system, you're not studying 10, 12 subjects anymore. You're studying a handful, 5 or 6 subjects. Now, you need English and maths because everyone needs English and maths. And one of the key reasons is to come and perfect your English. And you'll get that by speaking English and focusing and being taught in English. And then on top of the English and maths, at GCSE level, this is age 15, you do combined science and a humanity subject like geography, history, art, business studies. And then finally, if you have your own native language, if there is a qualification in that, they do that. Beyond that, when they're doing A levels, they're just studying 3 subjects. And that, I think, really helps students find their motivation in the sense of, well, I'm not studying chemistry and maths anymore because I don't want to, but I am studying English because I love reading books. I'm studying photography because I have an artistic eye, and I'm studying business studies because my parents are in business and I want to kind of follow them in their career path. So that really helps us with the motivation in the students are studying what they want to study rather than what they have to study.
Great, thank you. I have made a note of this added value, and I will ask you for an article on that for our website.
Okay.
I always say when I'm in my initial consultation sessions with my families, it's easy to look at a selective school's results because they only select the best anyway. And then it's only natural that those best add to the school's fame and recognition and their place in rankings.
Yeah.
But when you go to a school that is not selective, that's where you get real success, because then you are guaranteed a far better package. You'll get more attention, you'll get more supervision, you'll get closer help and support. And it's just ensures that, you know, the price tag is worth it. So for us, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
It really is. Absolutely. It is you know, families are making a big sacrifice to pay for what they get, which is, as you say, the individual attention, the fact that, you know, we pay real attention to them and support them in every way we possibly can. And we don't throw them out the minute they struggle, which, you know, some schools do in order to ensure the school's reputation, which, you know, my reputation will come from how well we do by our families and by our students.
Absolutely. Now let's look at outside academics, the enrichment, your support. So because families want to know, so what happens the day finishes, they finish their lessons, what do you do with them? Tell me about the social life of a boarding school.
Yeah. So our school day in teaching terms ends at 4:30, unless there is some individual one-to-one or small group coaching going on to fill in some of those gaps that I talked about earlier. And then the students have a period of time until 7:30 in the evening. It's not completely unsupervised. There's activities for them to get involved with, and there is a meal if they would like it in the boarding house, which we would expect them to go to, or maybe once in a while find their own provision if they would like to, special occasions, birthdays, like that kind of thing. But they have free time. Some schools in that time slot, they have, as we've talked about, huge resources available to them on the school site, and they can pick and choose from what they do. The way smaller schools do that is by saying, well, we're in a town. The town's got skateboard park, it's got a climbing club, it's got dance clubs, we have a basketball academy allied with a local basketball club. There's football, there's, you know, they can carry on their own interests like photography, as you see in the picture there. And with our students being a little bit older, 15 to 19, it's not so much when they're sort of 11, 12, 13, you're keeping them busy and tiring them out to a certain extent. Whereas with older students,
dog is a happy dog, we know.
that's the one, yeah. And with older students, though, they come to us and they generally know that they already like table tennis, or they like dancing, or they like boxing, or something like that. And we say, that's absolutely fine. There is a great boxing club down the road. We'll introduce you. We'll make sure you get there safe and make sure you get home safe. And you know, you can fit that out around your schedule. And then 7:30 to 9:30, they're in their own boarding house. And you saw the photograph earlier of that red brick building. That's one of the boarding houses.
Yeah,
they're in their own boarding house. That's it. There you are, in the center of the picture there. Offices and dining and so forth on the lower floor, and then 2 floors of boarding above. And they're in that house, and that's it until 9:30, and they're working from 7:30 to 9:30, doing their homework quietly in their own room and getting on with it. And there's a member of staff going around, checking on them, seeing if they need any help, if they understand their work, and so forth. Then 9:30 till 10:30, they have free time to socialize in the house, table tennis, bit of television, go to each other's rooms and just, you know, spend time with each other. And then the lights go out and it's time to rest. On Thursdays and Saturdays, our students, on Fridays and Saturdays, our students have the choice of one of those nights being a later night, where they can, instead of having homework, they can go into town, have a meal with their friends, no alcohol, of course, because it's a school, have a meal with their friends, go to the cinema, do an activity that stays later, play football, you know, whatever it might be. And the weekends, we don't have Saturday school like a lot of boarding schools do. So the weekends, the students sleep a little bit later, get up and have sometimes a brunch instead of a formal lunch, and get on with their studies or go and enjoy the town. And we run a number of trips at the weekend to make sure that they are busy and finding out about the area where they've been. So in the first 4 weeks of term this year, all of our new students have been to London already. They've been to Dover Castle and studied the history of that castle already. They've been to a lovely seaside town called Deal and had a picnic conversation and gone crab fishing off the pier and sent a postcard home and done all of those kind of traditional touristy things. And they've been in for a walk in the lovely countryside that we have as well. So, and that's in first 4 weeks, just as part of our introduction to the school. So the students are, try and get the balance right. They need some time to relax and rest a little bit. They need some time to study if they've got a big essay or a big assignment to do. But they also need to have provision if they want to go bowling or to the cinema or something like that. We make sure that their interests are catered for.
You'd be happy to hear how one of your students puts this kind
Mert?
of setting. Mert, yes, Mert is my.
What a lovely boy he is. Yeah.
I've got to introduce. Mert is a Turkish student who started at Earlscliff this year.
Yep.
His academic choices, I would say, before Earlscliff were not so suitable. So he wasn't happy where he was.
Yeah.
And we've now placed him at Earlscliff, and he is the happiest kid ever. He's completely changed in his outlook on life, and on his views on boarding school has changed. The way he puts it is it's academic enough and independent enough. So he feels like he's being treated as an adult. There's no strict curfews, no gated community, and it's part of the town. And he feels that his responsibilities at school and the way that he's treated, the things that his teachers and the academic staff expect from him are enough to entice him to be fully engaged in what he's supposed to do. So I'm very happy that we have this very happy child. He has already been to London. He has already been to many places in his weekends, and he's already made great friends, and he's making a great progress. And the Mert I knew last year at another school is a very different Mert to the guy that you have at hand. So thank you for all this. His family are very happy, and they're going to be watching this.
He's a delight. Yeah, he's a lovely boy. He's slightly, what would I say? He's still got that youthful enthusiasm, even though he's, growing up and he's a teenager now. He's still got that youthful enthusiasm for life, that kind of wide-eyed quality. Makes him very easy to like. But, I think you're touching on something there, is that, if parents are able to visit a school and get a sense of it and feel the school and meet some people there and see how the students are, that's very valuable. But I appreciate not everybody's able to do that. But it's very, your role there is absolutely vital in that you have been to the school. You know stories of students who've been to the school and been very happy, especially if they haven't been happy elsewhere. And so parents can be confident that even if they haven't experience that themselves, they know somebody that they trust who has. And I think the way you can tell that as a parent is the agent interested in you as a family, in the child as an individual, and do they then therefore recommend a school to you based on knowing the child and knowing the family, or do they just have a list of boarding schools and it's all our students go to these schools and there you are, off you go. That personal element can't always be there, but if the parents aren't able to travel and so forth. But a personal relationship with a caring agent is just as important as a personal relationship with a caring school.
That's right. We have never, as a team, placed a child in a school just because they named that school or they heard from somebody or there was a friend or an alumni they knew. Sometimes it may take us weeks to match that child to a school, but we will go on looking for the perfect match, because I wouldn't, as a person, as a mother myself, wouldn't want an unhappy child at hand, an unhappy parent, because there's thousands of kilometers in between, and I don't want this whole dysfunctional relationship in terms of their children's future, because when we onboard a child, we onboard them till the end of their education life. We don't just say, okay, here's your school placement, goodbye. So we do tend to want to look after them just the same way as you do. So
absolutely. My wife and I have 5 children and they went to 4 different schools. Because the right school for them.
Yeah. So just a last question. Boarding school rules. What should the parents expect the child should not do or should do? That this is a very pressing question from all parents. I'm not going to keep you much longer. It's already 40 minutes. So quite quickly.
No, that's fine.
What are the boarding school rules that they should all follow, be careful about?
Yeah, I think children need rules. There is absolutely no doubt that children flourish in a boundary of caring authority. And you know, so parenting and being a good school is not about caring or authority, it's about caring and authority. Those two things together that the children absolutely need. They need rules. But those rules need to be human. They need to be explained to the students, and they need to be directed at the student's own period and point of development. And so the restrictions that you might place on a 13-year-old, you don't place on a 16-year-old.
That's right.
You don't place on an 18-year-old. We have our students, as you know, 15 to 19. Some of them come for a year, 2 years, sometimes 3. And we spend a lot of time between September and December explaining our values and standards to the students in assemblies and forums and all sorts of different environments. Values and standards first, and then rules second.
Yes.
We want to be a caring community, and therefore these rules enforce that, and these rules will pull you into line if you're not showing that you care about other people and you're being too selfish. One of the things I think about boarding is it does expect you to make sacrifices in your own desires because you live as part of a community. The school, the house you live in doesn't run for you, it runs for the benefit of the whole community, and sometimes your freedoms have to be subsumed for the good of the group. You might want to make a meal at 8 o'clock, but if you do that, you'll disturb other students who are working. So you had your opportunity to eat before 7:30 and you can eat again at 9:30. But in certain times you won't. Why? Because it's about a caring community. It's about being considerate to other people. It's about neighborliness. Those are the values that underpin it, rather than just the kitchen's shut between these 2 hours because it is. So I think it's the values and standards that underpin the rules and restrictions. And then we trust. But if students show that they need more guidance, then we make the rules a little bit tighter for them. So one example is that our students must be off their devices by 10:30 at night. They must be off their phone, off their laptop, getting some good sleep. We don't take their phones off them unless we go around at 10:30 and find out that they're watching a movie or playing games or on their laptop or something like that, in which case we restrict their privileges because they've shown that they can't behave responsibly. So it isn't a kind of we don't trust you, we're having that. It's we'll give you the opportunity to make the right decision. If you don't make the right decision, we'll tell you why it's not the right decision, and then we'll pull you into line and then give you an opportunity to show that that you can get this right.
Thank you, Joss. I just want to point out to all our parents that I have been to your school, yes, and I know the town really well. And I just want to point out, if you can see on my screen, my mouse sort of sliding through from left to right. This is all a beach, everyone. And I've been to this beach and I swam at this beach. And it's a beautiful golden sandy beach. I quite like it. And it's so close to the school. And I'm sure that on a good weather, the children enjoy that privilege too.
They do, and they can do water sports in the town. There's a water sports centre. Really? They can go paddleboarding, scuba diving, all sorts. So yeah, we're very lucky. The beach there is only 500 meters from school. It's a lovely environment to be in.
Well, I've just stopped sharing. That's the end of our PowerPoint. But I now have asked you all my questions. Is there anything you want to add, Jenny? If there's any questions from our guests, from our parents, and anyone watching us, we can have them now. Or they will have to pose it to us later, and I'll be sending them over to you.
From my side, I think, Joss, that was a brilliant summary. I suppose the only thing I would add is that, so I'm head of admissions, and that communication for us as a school, and I know this is a very common thing, is that we really take the time to get to know our students before they come, and how we can help them. And we do quite a lengthy interview procedure so that we can really understand how to best support a student. And then that support continues throughout our entire school, because it is this pre-university preparation, and we're all very involved as a team to make sure that those choices they make, these key choices at these ages, are guided decisions that help provide a very successful future and a happy future for our students. But otherwise, yeah, I'm loving seeing how Mert, your student, is blossoming in just 5 weeks. Now, I'm so proud of him. And we've had a great time. You know, I met him and Josh was on the tour as well. We met him that first day, and he was kind of, you know,
very unsure. Yes,
very unsure, quite contained. And then I mean, he's just in every aspect. He is just blossoming. So we are super proud.
I always say there is always a school for every child, but not every school is for every child. So best match is the way forward. Thank you so much.
That is perfectly put.
Well, you can't use it. I've got copyrights on it.
We also say when we meet our students that, you know, part of the application process is an interview. We say it's an interview, but you must interview us. So because if I'm asking you to come to our school, it's not going to work. You know, you have to make this decision to come to our school, and you have to be confident that this is the right school for you. You know, these are precious times, and you need to take some ownership of this decision as well. So you ask the questions.
That's right. That's cool. Yes, absolutely. I always encourage our students to do that in their interview. That is their chance. If they can't come over and see it, the interview is a perfect chance to ask absolutely anything they want to know about, because we do have a lot of prejudices, or we do have a lot of misinformation. Sometimes catalogs and brochures and websites don't really give us what we want to know. And the decision has to be made as a family. It's not just the mother and more often than not, I always get the parents say he should be near London. And then the facilities, the academic rigor, the whole system, the lifestyle, everything comes second. So I always say, okay, the choice of location is, yes, important, but let's just push it down a little bit, the list, and then look at other stuff. Get to know your kid and your kid's expectations. And it has been known that sometimes the parents choose a school, the kid's not happy, and then they end up changing because it was the parents' choice, not the child's choice. So where the child is also involved in this decision making, then, you know, everything goes a lot more smoother in our experience.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I think
absolutely.
That wraps it all up. Thank you for all your time, and this has been a very informative guide to boarding schools. Thank you for your efforts, Joss and Jenny. Have a great weekend.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime. And thank you for your support of Earlscliff. It means a lot to us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.